Hello and welcome back to CBR MTG. My name is Angus Mackay and I'm joined here by Frank Karamarudis.
Hello.
And today we're playing Modern once again with Chris Kauter on Black-White Eldrazi Taxes and Nathan Widdup on U-White Control. Hey Frank, U-White Control's actually seen a huge uptick since Jace's revival. What's the go with that?
Well, so I think it's not necessarily about Jace's revival. I think that was a definite boon to the deck, but I actually think that the card that's really kind of put it ahead has been twofold. It's been Teferi has been a huge addition. Let me just check really quick because it feels like I know Nathan's a little bit weird about his list. He doesn't necessarily love Teferi, but I think overall, Teferi's been great.
Yeah, so Nathan's not playing Teferi in this list, unfortunately. Yeah, he's playing two Gideon of the Trial and two Jason Mind Sculptor. So we'll quickly run through the lists before they get too far into their games. So the usual repeat offenders for Blue-White Control on Nathan's side with the Snapcaster Mage, Wall of Omens, Clicks, and then Jace, Gideon, Cryptic, 2 Supreme Verdicts, and 1 Wrath of God main board. So get real hard on that board wipes. Serum Visions, Path, Negate, Mana Leak, Logic Knot spells, Spring Sea, Spell Snare, Searcher's Counter, Detention Sphere, and then a bunch of lands. This is pretty stock standard for the most part, except for the numbers are a little bit interesting. We have...
I was actually going to say that I don't think this is stock standard anymore. This is actually old Blue-White Control. What I was going to say was that Teferi has changed it, and Terminus being good has changed it.
Yeah.
Because of humans' kind of dominance in the format, it's a solid like 8%, and it's kind of the deck to beat right now. Terminus being a 1 mana Wrath has been a huge addition, and I've seen lists that go up to 4 like pretty easily. Nathan is kind of, he hasn't let go of kind of the previous iterations of Blue-White, and I don't think that there's necessarily a problem with that because know what you play what you know.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think that recently the reason that Blue-White has taken prominence has been because of the positioning of Teferi, as well as Jace and Terminus. Jace and Terminus go hand in hand, and so this list, which is a little bit more outdated. I say that in air quotes because it still seems pretty solid. He's playing a split in the Wraths as a kind of before Terminus answer to Meddling Mage and stuff.
Yeah, it seems very interesting, and you can tell one of the prominent reasons for Nathan deciding to not play the new cards is that his deck is almost completely foiled out. One of the best reasons not to do that. But Chris getting started with quite an aggressive start. That Thalia is going to be quite a problem for Nathan if he continues because it's making all his spells cost 1 more to cast.
Yeah. The other thing about Nathan's deck is that he is going the route of Blue-White Control of being the land destruction deck.
Yeah.
So it's playing like 4 Spreading Seas as well as 4 Field of Ruins and just a ton of basics. And so what Nathan is planning to do is he's also trying to play the mana denial game plan. And that kind of is directly opposed to the newer versions, which are a little bit heavier on just being more controlling and less mana denial-y. And so Chris actually has a bit of an advantage here because he's playing Hate Bears and, Eldrazi Taxes, which is, Cthulhu Hate Bears. And Eldritch Hate Bears, I guess. And between like Aether Vial and the other forms of like disruption that he has, so like Tide Hollow Sculler, or even Gaunty and Thought-Knot Seer, like they deal with Nathan's problematic cards pretty well. Having an uncounterable mystery creature is always very good as well, and that's what Aether Vial does. So I think Nathan's going to have a bit of a hard time with this matchup, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. It's interesting. Chris must have some absolute gas in hand because if I'm not mistaken, he just played out that Blade Splicer onto an empty board, and Nathan just quite easily countered that by exiling 2 cards with the Logic Knot. But like the Aether Vial's sitting there on 3, so there must be something going on there. Perhaps he has another Flicker Wisp, or no, maybe not. It's quite possible that he has something very disruptive in his hand that he wants to just hold on to with Dear Hope. We do see a Wasteland Strangler and a Flicker Wisp, so perhaps looking for the perfect time to release his land from the Spreading Seas hold that it has on him. But at the moment, he doesn't really have to do anything, really, because Nathan's on the back foot now. Like, he has to find some removal to get rid of these just small 2 creatures, and Chris will be able to come back from that pretty easily, I think.
Yeah, what it looks like is that his Aether Vial is now going to stay there and be protection for whatever Nathan tries to deal with, because he has the Flicker Wisp. And we've zoned back in. And the thing is that he has Nathan on a huge clock, right? Like 5 per turn is great. And it's interesting because he does risk overcommitting for like a Wrath. But the other thing is that like he can rebuild incredibly quickly because his hand is 3 drops and an Aether Vial. So it looks like I see how he could like flash out one of the lands to put both an additional pressure and give him an opportunity to cast more things. And I think he has to do that because he can smell the blood, right? He has his opponent on 8 damage. So,
and with 8 power on board, like this is a 2-turn clock. You know, Nathan's really got to pull something out to get through this one, I think.
Yeah,
it could be a long one. We noticed that Nathan's not even playing any Settle the Wreckage, which I feel like has been pretty important in those recent games of Blue-White Control. Even Jessica.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that goes back to Nathan is playing a relatively old list. And it's funny when you say old in Modern because, you know, it's a few months old. Because, like, since, I guess, before the most recent unbannings, Modern has just become such a fast cyclical format that, you know, everything's viable, and if you can deal with humans in an okay manner, then like you're gonna be fine. And it looks like Nathan is playing a list that hasn't quite, adapted to humans quite as much. But
and, like, it's not only humans, right? There's like the new boogeyman of the format being Red-Black Vengevine.
Yeah, Bridgevine,
the spiritual successor to Hollow One. It's like these are the types of decks that you have to be looking out for now, and like being able to have Settle the Wreckage main board means that you know your opponent could spend their whole hand putting 2 Vengevines on the battlefield turn 1, which is fantastic. But you know, like if you manage to make your way all the way to turn 4 and stall until then like Settle the Wreckage could just be an absolute blowout. Being able to exile the creatures as opposed to just putting them back in the bin where they'll surely come back is a pretty huge benefit. So something to consider.
Yeah, and I think as we like look at the expedition lands and all of that good stuff, I do think Nathan is probably kind of more of a victim to his foils than anything else, which is, you know, that's very respectable because they're pretty. Pretty.
Exactly. And with the Wasteland Strangler, that was enough for Nathan to pack it up. Unfortunately, not being able to slow down Chris as much as he'd like to, so he can have a chance to stabilize. But the Thalia really got the work done on that game.
I think like turn 1 Aether Vial into turn 2 Thalia is probably a bad time for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if we're talking about sideboards, though, it looks like Chris has 1 Pithing Needle, 1 Disenchant, 2 core Firewalkers, 1 Leonin Relic Warder, 1 Phyrexian Revoker, 2 Rest in Peace, 2 Stony Silence, 1 Cabal, Console of Allocation, 2 Mirren Crusader, 1 Orzhov Pontiff, and 1 Gideon Ally of Zendikar.
Mhm.
And it looks like Nathan has 3 Stony Silence, 2 Timely Reinforcements, 2 Blessed Alliance, 1 Runed Halo, 2 Dispel, 2 Rest in Peace, 2 Geist of St. Shaft, and 1 Settle the Wreckage. So we see some of the tech we were talking about earlier, but it's kind of funny when the Taxes player is playing more one-ofs in his sideboard than the like control with
Absolutely.
Card draw and card selection.
And it's definitely good to go with that one-off plan because you can really tailor depending on the deck, not just depending on what you think your opponent could be bringing in.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
I think I saw coming into Nathan's side was the Stony Silences and the Blessed Alliance, and then possibly even some Timely Reinforcements. And then on Chris's side, he brought in Campbell's Console of Allocation, and I'm not sure after that actually. So may have been bringing in the Disenchant as well, possibly even the Pithing Needle.
I think the Gideon is also pretty good.
Okay, yeah, that seems reasonable. Gideon Ally of Zendikar has been a really format. I was going to say format warping, but it's format. It's going across multiple different formats as a good hoser for control decks because you're just continually spitting out value, and it's pretty notoriously hard for tap out control, especially of the blue-white variety, to get rid of it.
Phyrexian Revoker is also a very reasonable choice because he saw Gideon game 1, and he can assume that some of Big Daddy Jace is coming in, or is in. Even though we haven't really seen him in game 1.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, this deck that actually has disruption and has creatures that really stall and like hold up Nathan's game are going to be pretty good against just mono removal deck. So,
it looks
I'm
like Chris
interested
is
to see how it
considering.
goes.
Yeah, it looks like Chris is considering the Rest in Peace, but I think he's turning back on it in the end, which is probably reasonable. Like, it turns off his logic knots and turns off his snapcasters, but at what point are you devoting too many slots to half of Nathan's game plan?
Yeah, I mean, a big aspect of that as well is that, like, you have to know as just a modern player that, like, blue-white control has a tendency not to play the full 4 snapcasters, which is really interesting for a control deck. As someone who plays a lot of blue-red, like, I could never imagine going below 4 snapcasters because all I want to do is lightning belt people. But like in a deck that you don't have lightning belts, it's just not as good, I guess. Especially when Nathan is playing as many enchantments as he is, with the full playset of Spreading Seas and like Wall of Omens and just a lot of the other random cards that he's playing. Like, you're not gonna get as much value out of Snapcaster as you would in other blue decks. So having 2 is kind of pretty stock standard.
Yeah, I think like the blue-white control decks get a lot of value from it gets a lot of value from turning off a lot of your opponent's cards as well. So the less slots in your deck you devote to creatures, the more likelihood you have of turning off your opponent's Fatal Pushes and Path to Exiles and stuff. So that's why I've seen even a couple of lists dropping the Wall of Omens package as well and just going mono non-creatures, because it's good to have cards that your opponent cannot cast, because that's like less cards that you have to worry about.
Yeah, well, this goes back to the evolution of blue-white and how it's become just kind of a draw-go deck. Hoping to Terminus a lot more because you're playing Opt, because you're playing Terminus and Teferi, which deeply, deeply benefits every time you have a 1-mana spell, because it's essentially a 3-mana Planeswalker then, and you can cast 2 spells, right? You just don't need Wall of Omens anymore because, like, randomly Terminusing it is fine, but also when you rather just have another gas card. And it looks like Chris is off to a really good start with a turn 1 Aether Vial, which do not... Oh, gosh, goodness.
Yeah, the turn 1 Ether Vial again on the as Chris's first turn play is going to be hugely beneficial for him in these games. Despite being on the draw, having Ether Vial resolves means that as long as Nathan can't pin down that Stony Silence, Chris will be able to sort of get through some creatures uncounterably, which is what good Ether Vial decks do.
Yeah. Look, to be fair, I think Nathan is winning in the pretty art land. Pretty art game. He is the moral victory, it looks like, because those hollowed fountains, pretty good.
It seems like the hollowed fountains might be blinding him a little bit because he had to get pointed out by someone that Wall of Omens is in fact a permanent, and he comes onto the battlefield as well. So Nathan put it onto the battlefield, drew a card, and then went and put it into my bin. So unfortunately, not used to having to play creatures, possibly after playing mostly spells for Nathan's side.
I mean, it's a cycle that blocks, essentially. So I could see just putting it straight in the graveyard. Yeah, that's a pretty fair choice, I reckon.
There's no creatures here to block, so why would I need to use it?
Yeah. What even is blocking?
Exactly. So Celestial Colonnade for Nathan, just putting down those lands the best he can. It seems like a pretty good opportunity to put down those tapped lands. But I mean, Chris has the Leon and Arbiter in hand. He might be considering vialing it in, and he's going for the Thalia. Okay, going for the Thalia. But it could be good to start strip mining Nathan when he has the chance. But of course, he has to wait for Nathan to tap out even a little bit, which he didn't quite have the chance to at that point.
Yeah, I think if I'm in Chris's situation and I don't have that third land, and I want to go up to 3, I would probably, in my upkeep, flash it in and then go up to 3.
Sure.
So I can Leon and Arbiter, but he drew the land, so now he can cast it. Have Nathan try and deal with the Leon and Arbiter, flash in another one, and he's gonna get him.
He's gonna absolutely get him. So here he comes, opting not to vial up to 3 just at this very point in time, possibly just trying to curve up just a little bit further. Nathan puts his hands to the side.
Happily putting away the cards. Oh, please, he says, please commit more to the board.
So is he a Blessed Alliance, a Supreme Verdict, a Wrath of God, and I think I saw a Gideon
and a Cryptic
as well. Yeah, there you go. So
a
lot of full art cards in there.
Yeah. Gosh, it's blinding me, the shininess. Although, is that Blessed Alliance? Is that shiny?
No, it might be. If it's not, we'll have
Chris,
to have a talk
I'm disappointed.
with him.
He's got 2 full art, player reward cards.
Yeah, and then
1 uncommon non-shiny. He's insulting me.
Hey, look, it might be shiny. It could just be camera tricks, but the sideboard comes last when it comes to foiling out. Poor Nathan, poor Chris did have to make a decision between Wrath of God and Supreme Verdict, which makes things very awkward.
Yeah, it's also, I understand how he wants to look to see his opponent's, what his opponent's doing before committing the Leon and Arbiter, but I actually like playing it, spending the mana to do Tide Hollow Sculler, and then flashing in the thing, especially knowing that he does have the fetch land.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems pretty reasonable to wait for the fetch. But Nathan's only going to fetch at the end step anyway, so really, you might be getting him, but for the most part, he will have that 2 lands untapped. Could be a good way to get rid of a Celestial Colonnade, though. But I do like the idea of flashing it in response to a fetch just to keep Nathan on his toes, but it could be also that Chris is keeping an eye on his life total. I mean, it's not completely irrelevant to have to keep an eye on your life total, and having to pay black and white means that he will have to take exactly 1 damage for the privilege. So
it's interesting because Nathan has perfect information, Chris has perfect information at this point. So he knows, because what Nathan got the Celestial Colonnade, that he has the Blessed Alliance, but he also can cast the Gideon and not the Cryptic or the Wrath of God. Yeah. So I think in his position, I probably would have cast the other Arbiter, killed the Celestial Colonnade, and attacked with more, and forced him to have that extra land, while putting it in a board state. And I think that's an interesting play, because if he draws another untapped 5th land, then he can Wrath, but then I still have the Aether Vial to do that. Yeah, it's interesting. It's the reason. So, like, I play Death and Taxes in Legacy, and I really enjoy the deck because there's so many different lines of just denial and taxing your opponent, and it is a interesting deck to play.
Yeah, it seems that Nathan's also possibly kicking himself for taking that extra 2 damage when the Wall of Omens still does the job, but at least...
is he keeping his Wall of Omens? This is the best Wall of Omens I've ever seen.
The Wall of Omens of many different phases. So yeah, moving it from the exile zone onto the battlefield and then promptly moving it back off is fine. But that's just the way it is sometimes. But it seems, the Wrath of God will allow Nathan to get back his Supreme Verdict for a little bit more protection later on. But I mean, we'll see. Chris does have the hand that could overpower a good UI control hand, but he will have to wait until a Supreme Verdict comes down before he commits too much more to the board. Yeah,
it's interesting that he took this line. I think he has a Path, a Leonin Arbiter, a Thought Seer, a Flicker Wisp, and one thing that's hidden behind everything else that another Aether Vial?
Wait, down on
the far right, yeah.
He's
like teasing us with it. It's driving me crazy.
Yeah, it definitely looks like another Aether Vial.
Okay.
So I think just a backup one is probably reasonable, not playing out both. But I mean, most of the blue eye control sideboard consists of 1-for-1 removal when it comes to artifact hate. You don't usually see any artifact sweepers in white, so.
I mean, you could cast Detention Sphere, which might be a fair thing for
of course,
Chris to do. But like, if he does that, then he just blinks the Aether Vial that's being targeted, and then both of his are safe. So, yeah,
it's a whole thing. Yeah, it's just probably something that it doesn't feel like having to.
Is he gonna blink? He can't blink his guy. I wish he could blink his own guy. I would have been so excited.
What are you hoping that it'll blink?
So with the Eldrazi Displacer, if it could blink itself, you could blink it and bounce itself so that Gideon's layer of protection doesn't affect it, which would have been great. But you can only target another creature with Eldrazi Displacer, not Eldrazi Displacer.
Right. Okay. Well, Flicker will probably do a fine job of flickering Gideon for the low cost of however much it is.
Well, he's actually he went for the land, which was a good idea because it forced Nathan to have a 1-mana thing if he was gonna deal with Chris's board, or forced him to play the Blessed Alliance. And so that's why we saw him cast it for 2. The other thing is, because it's a flooded strand, Nathan is now going to have the question of, am I going to re-shock myself to get that extra mana? Which I don't know that he necessarily needs to do, because he will actually just have he will have 4 mana untapped. Oh, that also happens in the end step. So no, sorry, I was wrong. He won't have to shock, I guess. Maybe in the end step if he has a Path to Exile and he really wants to use it, but I don't see how he could want to do that.
Well, he'll have the option either way, but I think having the 4 mana is enough for this deck,
For this board state right now, especially knowing that he has a Cryptic and a
Supreme Verdict as well.
Supreme Verdict in hand, yeah. Oh, and he's bouncing the Flicker Wisp. And what did he? Bounce?
No, so Flicker Wisp is coming back, and now we're going to do it again. So
so he's
waiting for the Holy Fountain to come back and let him make a decision, and then now in the next end step, he's going to flicker it and flip Gideon, so it won't come back until Nathan's end step.
So he misses an activation, which is pretty good, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Just not having to worry about it attacking or just ticking up in general is pretty strong. But it will come back with its full set of counters as it usually does when it enters the battlefield. So
yeah, Displacer is a bit of a nightmare for control decks, just because like it blanks removal a lot of the time, so you have to remove that card if you're going to remove something.
Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting. Chris didn't get a chance to flash something else in, which is totally reasonable. Now he does have Thought-Knot Seer, which is going to be good.
Yeah, Thought-Knot Seer, he's decided to tick up to 4 online because he's really just not hitting those ups, which is probably fine, I suppose, if you have an active Aether Vial out.
Yeah. At what point do you think that you go on the Leonin Arbiter plan? Like Nathan's got 1 million mana essentially.
I think at this point you just give up, right?
Well, you could right now cast it now when his mana is low, because you might not get a chance again. But I think right now it's just going to be a bear, probably, which is fine. I could see him wanting to... Oh, he's doing it in his draw step, which is reasonable, although that puts him weak to Gideon's activation in that it could blanket. Yeah, it's interesting because
Gideon activation.
So the Gideon activation could stop the Thought-Knot Seer. So the reason to save the Thought-Knot Seer activation until end step is that you get to fog the Gideon effect. And getting that Stony Silence is pretty good. But I also think that that's just variance.
Yeah,
so
I mean, it's a hard one, right? Because he was fine in that instance, but the reason people do stuff in their draw step when it comes to looking at their hand, such as Vendilion Click or Thought-Knot Seer, as we saw before, is that you have the chance of seeing the most amount of cards for that turn, which is totally fine. But yeah, you miss out on the fact that Thought-Knot Seer is not actually able to do damage this turn, which can also be difficult. But if Nathan had the Stony Silence and he was able to play it, all you could do in response is just activate it. So I guess in that instance, Chris was pretty lucky. But usually, blue-eye control players don't play a whole lot in their main phase. So I guess was the correct decision for now. But I probably wouldn't be too unhappy with doing the Aether Vial at the end step.
So I'm actually a little bit off of doing the Vendilion Click in the draw step.
Okay.
And that's kind of the traditional way that you use Vendilion Click. And it definitely has its applications where it's just very, very good. But I've also found that by doing it at a later point in the game, unless you need to answer something now, or you need to put your opponent just on the back foot and really disrupt what their ideal turn is going to be, I think saving it for end step or for blocking or attacking or just a different time is just almost better. We've kind of been trained to use Vendilion Click and such in that way, and that's very fair. Because I think it was a certain pro that they made the play really famous, and people learned that you could do that, and you do end up seeing the most cards, and that's very good. But your opponent's also lost nothing on that, and you've given up your trick. So
yeah, for sure.
I'm less invested in that play now that I've done it a lot than when I initially did it. And so, especially with this board state and with Gideon being essentially a sorcery speed interaction, I do not want my big fat boy to be a solid target for that, if that's making sense.
For sure.
Okay, so
that is a shame. Not being able to go Gideon v Gideon.
No.
Yeah, the hardest part about putting Gideon Allies on the field against your control opponent is having it resolve. So not much you can do about that. But I mean, he saw his chance and he took it. There was not much else that could have happened in that situation. Nathan's going to be very unlikely to tap out for Chris to be able to jump in. But I mean, Nathan still has all Ds. He's still got that Cryptic Command in hand.
He's very close to stabilizing for sure. It's interesting that Chris, did he not attack? Or did he...
So Chris just attacked with one Thought-Knot Seer, and then Nathan was able to use Blessed Alliance.
Oh, okay.
Escalated to gain some life and make Chris sacrifice a creature, which was very unfortunate for him because of the situation that was presented to him. So, I mean, at that point, I'm not sure exactly when the Leonin Arbiter battlefield, but if you have a feeling that Blessed Alliance is coming, and he should have because he should have seen that card, you swing with the garbage creature as well as your big creature. Like, I've learned that in Affinity the hard way because Blessed Alliance can get your Cranial Plating, and all you had to do was swing with the 0/2 Ornithopter to save the day.
Yeah. Sometimes, attacking with the Gideon guy or the 0/2 isn't just about sending a message. It's actually the right play. A funny time. Oh, he got a Gideon. Oh, that is
an actual Gideon emblem from Arcade Post. Very, very beautiful art on that one.
It feels insulting to me.
To actually have an emblem.
Yeah, well, I'm always on the other side of that. I'm always the person who gets Gideoned. So when my opponent is like, no, you can't win the game anymore. Please try again, friendo. Yeah, I'm like, oh, well, okay. Thank you for actually having a token, actually having this drawing of Gideon stare at me smugly.
Yeah.
So
it's a big play. The Nathan's still holding that that Cryptic Command tied to his chest. With Chris not paying attention to the Gideon at all. All right, never mind.
Yeah.
The classic 4-mana Terminus off the top.
It's interesting though that Chris is kept in Path to Exile.
Yeah.
It looks like. I guess it gets the Celestial Colonnade, which is good.
Yeah.
And it could get a Gideon, which is also good. But your creatures and your lands, your like land destruction, your Ghost Quarters, they seem to do the same thing. Just they're more versatile about it. And so it's interesting that he's kept that card in. And that's something that I've kind of learned the hard way not to overcommit with that. Like with I play quite a bit of Grixis Death Shadow.
Sure.
And I keep in maybe 1 or 2 Fatal Push just because I don't have enough to bring in, but it's still not great. And I don't know if that's the case with Chris, if like he's just keeping in 1 or 2 because he doesn't have a ton to bring in, or if he has like a specific plan. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes from here. I guess if he does
it's going to be hard because Chris has spent nearly 2 turns not putting a creature onto the battlefield. Nathan's now attacking for 8 each turn. This is exactly where he wants to be.
Yeah, the other problem is that Celestial Colonnade has Vigilance, and so even though Nathan like has 3 mana in his sneaky pool, he actually has 4, so he can cast the Cryptic, and that's very important. Although this is interesting because Nathan has his guard up. He has his Cryptic just ready to cast. But is it worth it to like bounce the Eldrazi Displacer or bounce his lands or something? And I think the answer is probably no. Although it looks like Chris's vials are at 4 and 3, which means that he's probably going to try and cast Thalia, because Thalia is pretty good here.
Yeah.
And if he casts Thalia, then Nathan gets full value out of the Cryptic Command.
Yeah, absolutely. With the
It's
counter
good.
attack.
I like him attacking. That's definitely very reasonable. Oh,
Yeah,
yes,
just
do
keeping
it.
4 mana off the table. Well,
Goodbye, Gideon.
Nathan could bounce it back to his hand. I mean, Chris, if
Well,
he doesn't remember that Nathan always had the cryptic, he's definitely telegraphing it now with the 4 mana open and the thinking long and hard about whether or not it wants to save the Gideon.
the constant glancing at his
His one
his
card in
card.
hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my dude.
This is the time to use it. Yeah. Well, at least you got the free attack in, so he's just going to counter draw for that one, replacing the Thalia with a card of his own.
Which is fine, but now if Chris decides that he wants to cast the Tidehauler Sculler in his hand, which I think he probably should have, just Chris has like a solid clock going, but also having just a win next turn is probably better than having the mana open. And so I'm interested to see why he did that.
He definitely has
Is that black and white, or is that a color behind it?
I'm pretty sure it's black and white, but he has a disenchant in hand, so he's quite possibly just fearing making sure that he can keep it open. But the game is slipping away from him. He needs to start committing things to the board.
Yeah, that's the other thing, is that just like the Gambler song, you got to know when you have them and you got to know when to form. It is a colorless land. Okay, so that's a much more reasonable play. So that was an Eldrazi Temple. So like, totally get that.
Oh no! Must be nice to have it all sometimes.
Yeah. God, Nathan, you have to show off with your shiny cards, and then you have to. Oh, and he packed.
Yeah. Oh, so Nathan's at least helping Chris out with his cards, with his card problems, but it could be time to release that disenchant soon. Of this I guess it's a Eldrazi Temple, right? So he technically, like, he could use the disenchant to get rid of the spreading seas, but at this point, like, he's kind of got all the mana that he needs to cast his big Eldrazi threats. And after that, there's not a whole lot.
That's actually a Ghost Quarter.
It's a Ghost Quarter?
Yeah, so if you look at the Eldrazi Temple and the shading on that, and you compare it with the Ghost Quarter.
Slightly to the right, yeah.
Yeah.
There you go, yeah.
Using
Ghost Quarter is reasonable.
Our like fish memories and our skilled investigative skills, we have deduced that it is in fact a Ghost Quarter, which he cannot cast this turn, which is fine because all he needs to do is hope that Nathan overcommits. And the other thing is that so it's frustrating because he has the Shambling Vents, and the Shambling Vents can actually win him that race.
Yeah.
But he does have the Field of Ruin to just be like, nah.
Yeah, let's get rid of that.
So we will see.
Yeah, we'll see. But Ghost Quartering, using the disenchant for the Ghost Quarter now could actually be a reasonable play. But it looks like Nathan's just going to squash any plans of Nathan doing that.
Yeah, this was actually an okay play by Chris, though, because he still means that he is going to survive the next turn because he's going to be able to disenchant the Spreading Seas.
Yep.
And that's essentially how he he doesn't lose.
Unfortunately, he lost that chance to relinquish the Spreading Seas because he.
Because he got a swamp. Why did he get a swamp tapped?
He may have been unclear on the field of. You don't. It's 2 and a tap. Yeah, and he scoops it up. So he actually did have a little bit of a line because misreading the thing and assuming that it comes in tapped was his demise, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's okay.
It's the way it is sometimes in the biz. It's this is the highest level of Magic that you'll see on a Wednesday night in Canberra, that's for sure.
What is the Star City pun?
I have no idea, my friend. I'm not what you're talking about.
What is the card that's 2 white for a 2/2 prowess that whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you get a 1/1 monk with prowess?
It's a Monastery Mentor.
Manatee Mentor.
Or is it Monastery Mentor?
It's Monastery Mentor, I think. But that's a manatee, so it's Manatee Mentor. I can only assume. Well, thank you, Star City Games, for having these fun puns.
Yeah, the Star City Games whatever that series of cute cards is. It's very endearing, that's for sure.
My first open, I got a Hoppin' Rabbit Master instead of Goblin Rabble Master.
So there you go. Very good puns on that side.
Deeply entrenched. And so Chris is going to start us off the same way he started us off before, with just a good old Aether Vial, just slightly out of frame.
Yeah, this is the classic turn through. Let up with the Stony Silence. But yeah, he's been able to get that Aether Vial pretty consistently, which has been pretty fantastic for him. But this time, not going to be doing exactly what he wants it to do with the Stony Silence on the battlefield. And that's going to be a huge game for Nathan, because Christmas is second land drop.
Yeah. The other thing is that the reason that this Eldrazi Taxes deck is kind of fringe is that it's actually a 3-color deck. And you can definitely suffer from your lands just not having the right thing if you don't have a Aether Vial turn 1. And like Chris has had an Aether Vial turn 1, so we've seen what the deck can do. But it really, really relies on having an Aether Vial and having the right lands. So you can, if you get like a Ghost Court and an Eldrazi Temple, you can cast pretty much nothing, which is really rough. So yeah, Chris is in for a rough time right now, especially with his island Eldrazi Temple. Yeah,
it's going to be very hard, and Nathan's really playing the quickest game of Magic as he possibly can, because this is 41 minutes in, and he knows, and he's been to time before. He knows what it's like to go to time in a control deck. He just wants to seal this game up as fast as he possibly can. So he's just going to keep putting Chris's lands to the bottom with Jace's Fate Seal, and then go from there. So we'll see. Yeah. Not a good time to be missing land drops. That was a perfect Stony Silence, and it's just going to win him this game. It's going to run away.
Never a good time when your opponent immediately Fate Seals you.
Yeah.
So
I've been thinking about this in Modern. Like, is Jace Uptick the Modern version of the Legacy Brainstorm? Because putting Jace on 5 and like stopping your opponent's next draw is pretty strong for Modern, but paying 4 mana for a Brainstorm and then having it immediately die your next turn is like a lot less fun. So I don't know. I've been considering Uptick should be the standard for Jace, but that's a very hot take.
Yeah, no, I actually think that Jace isn't a 4-mana Planeswalker in Modern. It's more of a 6 or 7 mana Planeswalker, because the thing is in Modern right now, you can slam down a Jace, tick up, go to 5, and then still lose him next turn and maybe die. Just because humans can get so big, Dread Divine can go so wide. Like, Hollow One is crazy. You just have so many hyper-aggressive decks, hyper-linear decks that just want to go wild. And so the reason that like you've seen a shift to Teferi is that you essentially cast him turn 5, but you have 2 mana open, and that 2 mana translates to 2 spells a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And so that means you have interaction. Whereas with Jace, you have to cast him when you have extra mana. And so in this it's like fine.
Teferi, right?
Huh?
He works like Teferi, right? You play Teferi on control deck's version of turn 3, which is turn 5, and then you play Jace on turn 6, so you always have 2 mana open for that mana leak.
Yeah, and that's the big thing. I actually think that Jace is slower than Teferi, which is like a weird statement for, a 5 mana Planeswalker versus a 4 mana. Maybe the most iconic card in Magic. Unsure.
Yeah. I don't know. I think Kobolds of Kirkkeep will give you a run for you.
Oh no. Those Kobolds. But yeah, Nathan, look, everyone's been to the draw zone and the timeout zone, but Nathan was raised in it. He was born in it, and he lives in it. So the fact that he's going fast now is a surprise to everyone.
Yeah, this is how I think everyone would like their control players to play at all points in time. But Nathan's just working at lightning speed, taking full advantage of the fact that he's ahead and just making sure that he can secure that victory in a reasonable time frame.
That, though? He took a second. He took a second. Look, always take a second for self-care. Did you see he scraped away a little bit of his card? Yeah.
As we were talking about how fast he was going.
Yeah.
You got to take the second to scratch the scum off your cards.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And
I don't know if this shambling event will be in time because Nathan's running away with this game. He's going to ultimate Jace next turn.
Oh, yeah. Chris is just dead.
Hold on. hold that thought. Jace is quelled for a little bit, and for but a second, that Jace was stopped.
It looks so good. So powerful for that single moment.
Yeah, searching his library for that much-needed land he needed for that whole game. But, I think it's too little too late, unfortunately. Jace ultimating next turn with Chris seemingly no way out. But it's pretty good to see a Jace ultimate live on camera. Well, not necessarily live, but definitely on camera.
Yeah, well, God, I've never gotten to the point where I've let one resolve. I've just given up beforehand, so I don't. Oh, is this what happens? And does he get it organized in whatever?
Yeah,
no, he has to shuffle it.
Chris has been a good player. He's allowing the game to, possibly even wanting it to go to time, which is.
Oh, Nathan, don't you? Oh, God.
Going into strip mine mode, just turning off as much lands as he possibly can. Yeah, that's a strip mine at the moment. That was
pure spite.
Chris can hold on to hope, but this isn't an MTG clock. They're going to go to time together, and they're going to go to turns. And look, he might be just doing it to see what would happen. I've definitely played when there's a Karnan and Nugan on the battlefield, just to just to see how bad it can get, and it gets pretty bad. So it appears that Chris might be just seeing how badly it is to have your hand turn into your library.
It's important to see how low your lows can be, so that when you're living your highs.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, the quickest.
And he's brainstorming.
Now he's on the brainstorm plan. Yeah, this is bad news. That Vendilion click has come just in time, just to clean up the mess left by Snapcaster and Jace Ultimate. Chris is still holding on to hope. I mean, he's got 3 lands. He's got an Aether that doesn't do anything and 2 cards in hand.
He has another 2 turns, essentially. How many lands does he have? How many, sorry, not lands. That's not important. How many thingos? Cards in his library.
The classic, yeah.
How did he flash in the... Oh, he didn't flash in.
Just main phase, yeah. He's just doing it for fun at this point. Oh, he's not even casting the Flicker Wisp. But yeah, that was Dunzo.
He had he had 4 cards. Okay, he had 4 cards in the library. So had he been able to go to turn, so had the Vendilion click not happened,
yeah,
I guess he could hope to time out and hope that Nathan could get a clock fast enough.
Yeah, but Nathan wasn't letting him have a turn at that at all. You would have to, you would probably deck yourself. By the speed that Nathan was playing, you'd probably deck yourself before they went to turns. So,
yeah,
a very interesting game to watch, though, considering how quickly Nathan was able to steal that game 3.
Yeah, well, it was also interesting watching Chris be in a solid lead for most of each game, except for game 3. And to see Nathan hold on to the Cryptic Command and just with a hope and a prayer and just waiting for the ideal moment. And he was definitely rewarded for that Cryptic Command in game 2. And look, he may be playing an older version of Blue-White Control, but it still did good stuff. It still denied his mana. It answered all of his spells, and I guess he didn't need Terminus after all.
Oh, there you go. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. This has been Chris on Black-White Eldrazi and Taxes versus Nathan Widdup on U-White Control. This has been Angus Mackay. This has been Frank Karamarudis.
Yes, goodbye.
We'll see you next time.